ISIS thinks that Rome is one of its primary goals and that it is in its timetable. It has a timetable wherein in the next 10 years, by the year 2025, it hopes to bring about Armageddon, the final struggle between good and evil, or between the Muslims and the non-Muslims. And that one of the chief stepping stones to that Armageddon battle is the conquest of Rome, which they think they're going to be able to do within the next 5 years, that is by 2020.
For Westerners, Rome is just one of a handful of major capitals. What do they see in Rome?
What the Islamic State thinks of Rome is that it is the center of Christianity. Now, obviously, this is something that is influenced by the Roman Catholic Church being there, and a lot of other Christians would say, no, Rome is not the center of Christianity. But this is the symbolic value of Rome for them. They think that the conquest of Rome will be the complete sign of Islam's superiority over Christianity and defeat of Christianity.
Could you talk a little bit about the timeline of Muslim eschatology and where Rome fits into that?
Muhammad prophesied, or as Muhammad is supposed to have prophesied, according to a tradition that arose in Islam actually a couple hundred years after Muhammad's death, but is still widely believed, that Muhammad is supposed to have said that first Muslims will conquer the new Rome and then the old Rome. The new Rome is Constantinople, and of course the Muslims did conquer Constantinople in the year 1453, but they never did conquer Rome in Italy. And now there are many Islamic clerics, not just in ISIS, who say now the time is nigh for the rest of that prophecy to be fulfilled and for the Muslims to conquer Rome. And so this is something that the Islamic State has put on its specific agenda for the next few years. They're going to bring that about.
But you're saying outside of Islamic State, are they calling for, or are they just foretelling the invasion of Rome? These preachers outside of Islamic State.
Both. Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, who's probably the most influential and popular Muslim sheikh in the world. He's a TV preacher, actually, and he has a show on Al Jazeera. And he has said that now is the time that the Muslims are going to conquer Rome. He states it as if it's just an established fact that's going to happen, and that he thinks it's going to happen actually through a massive influx of immigrants. And that's just exactly what we're seeing in Europe today. Then there are other preachers who are actively calling upon Muslims to conquer Rome and saying that the time is nigh now with so many immigrants in Europe and the European countries being so weak and supine.
Where does the return of the Mahdi come in relation to Rome?
It is in relation to the conquest of Rome in the sense that once Rome is conquered, in this view, within the next 5 years, and then Israel will follow shortly after. They also believe that during this time period they're going to conquer Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now all this might seem wildly fanciful, that this terror organization is going to be able to do that, but you understand they're not talking about doing it by conventional armies. They're talking about doing it by overwhelming these lands with sympathizers from within and an influx of other people from outside. And that's something that we see happening right now in Europe. And so it's really not all that far outside the realm of possibility that they could at least make these attempts. And they think that once this battle takes place at Dabiq, this final battle, which they see coming in by 10 years from now, in 2025, that the Muslims will battle the non-Muslims in this town in northern Syria, and then Jesus, the Muslim prophet, and the Mahdi will return to the earth, and they will together conquer and Islamize the world. There's another prophecy attributed to Muhammad in which he says that Jesus will return and will break the cross, kill the pig, and abolish the jizya. Break the cross means destroy Christianity, which is supposed to be a perversion of Jesus' real teachings. Kill the pig because the Christians should be following the food laws forbidding the eating of pork, and they don't. And abolish the jizya being the tax that the Christians have to pay in tribute and a sign of their subjugation to the Islamic rulers. There will be no more jizya because there will be no more Christians in subjugation to the Islamic rulers. All the Christians at that point will be killed or converted to Islam.
Do they have a plan for the Pope?
They do. They plan to behead the Pope publicly and make it a spectacle the way the videos of Jihadi John beheading various hostages were an international sensation and a cause of international horror. The objective is, in the words of the Quran, to strike terror into the hearts of the enemies of Allah. And there was a Polish convert to Islam recently who has joined the Islamic State, and he said, once we take Rome, we're going to carry out mass beheadings in St. Peter's Square. And so this is the plan, to convert St. Peter's Square into a huge site of executions of people considered to be the enemies of Allah, chief among them the Pope, in order to cow and frighten the rest of the world into submitting to their rule.
As you said, their plan is not a traditional military invasion of Europe, but almost like a Viet Cong style uprising among their infiltrators in Europe.
We now see this massive influx of refugees into Europe. Now, there are a lot of very strange aspects to this refugee influx. In the first place, the refugees are all Muslims. And yet there were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, over 1 million Christians displaced by the various conflicts in the Middle East. None of the Christians, however, are trying to get into Europe. It's only Muslims. Now, that's one strange thing. Then NPR reported just recently that each one of these refugees pays 1,000 euros for the transport into Europe. Where are they getting all this money if their whole lives have been disrupted and they can't work and they can't stay in their homes? Who is paying for this? There is another thing, too. The Islamic State has said that we're going to flood Europe with refugees. And just yesterday, several Islamic State jihadis were found among the refugees, and I'm sure there will be many more. And so this indicates that they are using this refugee influx to get jihad terrorists into Europe. Maybe they're the ones paying for it as well, since they are the wealthiest terror group in the world. And once these men are there, then they're going to disrupt the societies in which they've been welcomed as refugees and try to work out the ISIS agenda of subverting these societies and ultimately destroying them and making them submit to Islamic law.